Before the Giganotosaurus, before the Titans, Shadowmanes, Reapers, and the growing collection of mythical monsters that now inhabit ARK, there was one creature whose distant roar could immediately change your plans. You could be travelling through the mountains with your strongest tame, carrying valuable resources and feeling completely prepared for anything the island could throw at you. Then, the ground would begin to shake. Something enormous would appear between the trees, and suddenly, you were no longer the predator. For more than 10 years, the Giganotosaurus, which is what I used to call it, but I now know is Giganotosaurus, has remained one of ARK's most recognizable and feared creatures. It was once the undisputed king of the ARKs, a predator so powerful that taming one became a milestone few survivors would ever forget. But over time, ARK changed, and new apex predators arrived, the creature meta evolved, and the original king gradually became sharing a throne that once belonged to it entirely. Now Studio Wildcard wants to bring that king back, and today we're travelling through the complete history of the Giganotosaurus, its introduction, its terrifying rise, the years it spent dominating the ARKs, the arrival of new competition, and the upcoming TLC designed to restore its presence, power, and identity. This is the rise, fall, and return of ARK's original king. If you do enjoy today's video, feel free to drop a like and subscribe, and let's get straight in with this. ARK Survival Evolved entered early access in June 2015. The game was considerably smaller than the enormous experience we know today, and there were fewer maps, fewer mechanics, and nowhere near the extraordinary number of creatures that now exist across the ARK. During those early months, the T-Rex was one of the ultimate symbols of progression. Taming a T-Rex meant a survivor was moving beyond the primitive stages of the game. It gave tribes a powerful carnivore, an imposing mount, and eventually one of the most important creatures for fighting bosses. The Spino also offered another major predator with additional speed, mobility, and access to the water. These creatures were dangerous, but they still felt understandable. Then in November 2015, Studio Wildcard added the Giganotosaurus. The hierarchy changed overnight. It wasn't simply another large carnivore joining the island, it was larger, more aggressive, and dramatically more dangerous than almost anything players had encountered before. This creature was the final word that told players almost everything they needed to know. Its temperament was listed simply as angry, not territorial, not aggressive, angry. The original dossier described as an enormous predator larger than a T-Rex or a Spino. It warned players that fighting one directly was never a good idea because its rage would grow within every hit it received. As the creature became angrier, its attacks became more dangerous. It could withstand an extraordinary amount of punishment, deal devastating damage, and turn what appeared to be a coordinated attack into a complete disaster. And for early ARK players, this was something completely different. The wilderness had always been dangerous, but most threats could eventually be overcome through preparation, stronger equipment, and better tames. And the Giganotosaurus felt like the game was reminding you that no matter how powerful your tribe became, something even more dangerous could still be waiting beyond your walls. A wild Giganotosaurus could tear through creatures that players had spent countless of hours taming and raising. Its attacks could inflict devastating damage, while its enormous health made killing one a serious undertaking. Running wasn't an option either, and despite its size, once the Giganotosaurus began chasing you, a small mistake could bring the entire encounter to a brutal end. The first moment of seeing one in the distance became a shared experience across the ARK community. Veteran players still remember checking a mountain for metal and spotting an unfamiliar shape on the horizon, slowly realizing how large it was. And for some survivors, curiosity took over. they moved closer to investigate, and those survivors normally learnt the lesson extremely quickly. But fear was only one half of the creature's appeal, because somehow it could be tamed, and doing so wasn't a casual afternoon activity. A survivor needed to be prepared, and it needed a reliable trap, powerful tranquilizing weapons, enormous quantities of narcotics, and the patience to, manage a creature whose torpor could disappear incredibly quickly. One mistake could result in the Giganotosaurus escaping, killing the player, or destroying creatures and equipment brought to contain it. Even after it had been knocked unconscious, the process wasn't over. Keeping it asleep became its own challenge, and for solo players, taming a high-level Giganotosaurus could feel like an endurance event. But completing that tame created one of ARK's greatest feelings of progression. That creature that had once forced you to abandon entire regions was now standing inside your base. You could place a saddle on it, climb onto its back, and experience the world from the perspective of the predator everyone else feared. And that was the moment that the Giganotosaurus became more than a dangerous wild creature. It became a status symbol. If a tribe owned one, they had achieved something so significant. And if they owned several, they bred them, and they had a force that rival tribes needed to respect. Breeding pushed that power even further. Players began searching for the best health and melee statistics, combining bloodlines and stacking mutations, and raising generations of increasingly powerful creatures. Across PvP, armies of the Giganotosaurus became an essential part of large-scale warfare, and their damage made them deadly frontline creatures capable of tearing through enemy tames and creating chaos during major battles. But their rage mechanic also introduced an enormous risk. If a ridden Giganotosaurus received too much damage too quickly, it could enter a state where even its own rider was no longer safe. It had its own consequences. A poorly managed Giganotosaurus could transform from your greatest weapon into another threat on the battlefield, and that danger was part of its identity. It wasn't a perfectly obedient machine. It was a barely controlled apex predator that your tribe had managed to point in the direction of the enemy. And in PvE, the Giganotosaurus also became one of the greatest tools for dealing with high health creatures and dangerous open world content. And as ARK expanded, players used powerful bred Giganotosaurus for harvesting enormous amounts of meat, fighting titans, and tackling activities such as orbital supply drops on extinction. And years after its introduction, the creature remained central to some of ARK's most demanding content. And few creatures have ever influenced both PvP and PvE as strongly as the Giganotosaurus did during its prime. But no king rules forever. And before we continue into the gradual decline and the challenger that would eventually stand beside it, I want to quickly mention the LoadedCrysis cluster. And if this video brings back memories and you want to begin another ARK adventure, our completely free ARK Survival Ascended cluster includes every single map, boosted rates, cross-map transfers, regular events, and a friendly active admin team. Whether you've been playing ARK since 2015 or recently joined ARK, everyone is welcome, no matter what platform you're on. You can join through the Discord link in the description. Let's get back to the story. So over the years, ARK became significantly larger. New maps introduced creatures with abilities that would have appeared almost impossible during the game's earliest months. Reapers arrived with incredible resistance and powerful attacks. Titans dwarfed almost everything around them, and Shadowmanes combined speed, armor, mobility, and coordinated group abilities. Original creatures, mechanical creatures, and increasingly fantastical creatures began filling the roles that had once belonged to that much smaller group of traditional dinosaurs. The Giganotosaurus remained powerful, but the world around it had changed. It had also received years of balancing changes, and that was understandable. A creature with overwhelming damage and health could easily dominate every part of the game if it felt unchecked. but each adjustment combined with the arrival of new alternatives and gradually reduced that feeling that the Giganotosaurus stood completely alone at the top of the food chain. And then in November 2022, the greatest challenge to its throne arrived. The Giganotosaurus entered ARK as another enormous apex predator. It occupied similar spawn locations and immediately invited comparison with the Giganotosaurus. However, the card chart arrived with a more modern collection of mechanics. It could build power through kills, gain momentum during combat, and reward an aggressive playstyle. Its taming process was unusual and interactive, asking players to earn its trust with corpses before riding it and completing the tame through combat. The card chart wasn't simply powerful, it felt dynamic. It had been designed after years of Wildcard learning how to create creatures with interconnected abilities and more complicated gameplay loops. And for many players, it offered similar power with greater versatility and fewer risks historically associated with controlling a Giganotosaurus. The official ARK community wiki now notes that the general usefulness of the Giganotosaurus decreased significantly following the release of the card chart. And that doesn't mean that the Giga became useless. Powerful bloodlines remain incredibly valuable, and experienced tribes continue using the creature in important situations. But something has changed. It was no longer the automatic answer when any players discussed the strongest creature. The king was now sharing its territory with a genuine rival. And when ARK Survival Ascended launched in 2023, the Giganotosaurus returned with improved visuals and benefits with a remastered game. But underneath those visual improvements, its basic identity remained familiar. While the design surrounding ARK's creatures continued becoming more ambitious, new creatures arrived with several abilities, unusual taming mechanics, team interactions, and specialized utility. The Giganotosaurus still possessed enough enormous strength, but strength alone no longer guaranteed the throne. ARK's original king had become a creature from a different era of game design, and that history is exactly why the community chose it for a TLC. During Wildcard's Extra Life campaign, players helped unlock a collection of TLC passes for 2026. The Giganotosaurus became one of the community's selected creatures, receiving a substantial update. And this was more than a request for better textures. Players wanted the Giga to feel more important again. And in August 2026, Wildcard finally revealed the first concept art and early direction for the TLC. Their announcement opened with a simple warning: the ground is beginning to shake again. Wildcard acknowledged the creature's history, and they described a time when the Giganotosaurus was the undisputed king of the ARKs, and when hearing its roar, it could send experienced survivors running, and taming one was a milestone few ever forgot. They also acknowledged the fact that as a new apex predators emerged, it gradually began sharing the spotlight, and stated the goal of this TLC is to restore the presence, power, and identity that originally made the Giganotosaurus the terror of the wilderness. The concept artwork already gives the creature a more imposing and detailed appearance. It looks heavier, more muscular, and more battle-worn, while still remaining recognizably the creature the players have known for over a decade. And most importantly, Wildcard doesn't appear to be abandoning its Rager mechanic. Instead, the team is exploring ways to make that mechanic more central to its identity. Wildcard says the closer that Giganotosaurus is pushed to the brink, the more dangerous it becomes. That suggests a stronger relationship between its remaining health, accumulated fury, and overall combat power. Its anger may also become contagious, and that wording could actually mean that nearby allied creatures receive some form of fury effect, or that the presence of an enraged Giganotosaurus influences the wider battle. However, Wildcard hasn't explained the exact mechanics, so we shouldn't treat anything as confirmed yet, but the concept also mentions a crushing response from creatures brave enough to crowd around by its feet. and this could finally address one of the awkward problems experienced by extremely large creatures in ARK's smaller enemies gathering beneath the body when normal attacks can struggle to reach them. A stomp, slam, or crushing attack could give the Giganotosaurus proper crowd control and make surrounding it considerably more dangerous. But the most interesting warning concerns what happens when its temper completely boils over. Wildcard says that friend and foe alike would be wise to give it room. And that suggests that a fully enraged Giganotosaurus will remain dangerous to everyone nearby. So, I want you guys to let me know in the comment section down below, are you excited about the official launch of the Giganotosaurus TLC, which will either be coming in September or November? We'll find out more release news on the new TLCs, and I will keep you guys completely updated. But for now, I'll catch you in the next one, and thank you so much for watching.